Welcome back to the Enlightened Misfits podcast, the space where we drop our mask, honor our truth, and rise into who we are always meant to be. I am your host, Lauren Perlingi, an intuitive human design business guide, trauma-informed healer, and mentor for new earth leaders. Today's guest is somebody whose story resonates deeply with me. Anu, welcome. So happy to have you here with us. Your story resonates so deeply with me, and I know it will with all of the listeners, or many of the listeners, I should say. Anu,
Mm.
could you take us through your journey and how everything unfolded for you?
Beautiful. Thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor to be on this podcast and to be with you today, Lauren. You're such a ray of light. I love it. So, yeah, for anyone who is listening, hi, my name's Anu. I am the founder of Victim to Victor, which is a platform dedicated for survivors of childhood sexual abuse as well as domestic violence. And the whole aim of my whole brand is to be a healing and support for those who have also endured these traumatic experiences. And I did actually release a book back in 2020 of the same name. And a year after that, I also started a podcast of the same name as well, because it just became my soul's purpose and, my whole mission to actually draw light on the consequences of traumatic experiences from early childhood and just the trauma cycle that we end up in, because there was just so many years of my life where I wasn't understanding why I was the way I was. And there was just so much confusion in the people that I was drawing into my life and the relationships that I was entering into. They were just damaging me even more because they were just full of toxicity. And so I just thought that was my life. I was just doomed to fail and doomed to be depressed and just doomed to be with these kind of people. And it was only really in my mid-30s that I started to uncover, why these sequence of events were occurring. And it all was down to the fact that I was sexually abused at the age of 3. And so that when you're abused at such a young age, it basically forms a whole worldview where you don't trust anybody, and you are suppressed. You don't feel like you can open up about anything, and so your communication skills are really bad. And then it was only really as I was getting older and I started to suffer from depression, anxiety. I wanted to end my life, and I had so many episodes of suicide as well, even like to the point that I actually jumped off a building and I survived, strangely, and also a few cases of overdose as well, where I'd end up in A&E. And but the thing is, it was so weird because I'd wake up from these, from obviously when I gained consciousness, and I'd wake up and I'd be so blasé about it and just laugh it off like it was just something funny. And the nurses and doctors would just look at me and be like, "Are you for real? You nearly died." But I had zero value for my life. My self-esteem was rock bottom, and so I didn't want to be alive. I probably would have been happy if I'd have died back then. And it's just so sad, when I look back and I just think, wow, all this was because I was sexually abused and nobody really listened to me or understood me and believed me. And so I just grew up just feeling alone and isolated, and um, I'd lost my whole identity. So yeah, and this is why I wanted to then shed light on trauma and PTSD and really hit home on the symptoms of what happens to you, if you are abused as a child. And so, yeah, that's been my life's mission. And I'm now creating a lot of videos on social media about it all. And I know that my message is really hitting home because there's so many people who are struggling right now. A lot of my messaging in the past year has gone towards relationships because, again, the fact that I was entering into these toxic relationships, it was all because of the fact that that's who all I felt like I deserved. I don't feel like I deserved a healthy relationship. And so a lot of my content in the past year has been about relationships, really, rather than just kind of surviving trauma and PTSD. And so, yeah, I just feel like it's just a evolution of education that, that I'm sharing out there. And I'm also now helping people through my coaching platform as well, which I'm really, really honored to be able to do. And yeah, that's basically me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you for being so courageous and sharing that. And I know, as you know, that it can be scary sometimes, even now, of just kind of sharing a little bit about, who you are and where you came from and, your survivor's journey to, at this point from before to that after. So can you kind of you touched a little bit about this. What was like the turning point of seeing yourself not as like that victim of your story, more to
Mm.
be like that victor or like the author of your own healing?
So, I remember this clearly because I'm developing a movie called Silent Screams, and that title is all based around this turning point. It was basically when I hit rock bottom. So I'd just been in these real horrible relationships. It was like one after the other because I basically felt like I needed a man in my life to validate me because I had zero self-esteem and I had zero validation for myself. And so obviously when you're in that low vibrational frequency, you're going to then draw low vibe people into your life. And so I was drawing all these real low vibe men into my life. Like the first one was an alcoholic, and then the second one was addicted to smoking weed. And they were both equally as crazy because they'd be like punching holes through my apartment walls and stuff, and there'd be police involved. And then I was basically away for the weekend with one of the, well, it wasn't with one of the partners. It was I was trying to get away from one of the partners,
Yeah.
and then when I got back, I found like my whole property had just been absolutely vandalized, and as in like my sofas were like slashed with knives. He'd smeared like fish, like bought these fish cans, and because they really really smell like anchovies and stuff, and he smeared
Oh
that
yeah,
all.
yeah,
Yeah, so he smeared that all over my clothes, within my drawers. And then he used one of my lipsticks and he graffitied my walls with it. And basically it was just real non-reversible damage. And so obviously it costs thousands to even try and fix. But I remember that night when I got back in and I just found just my whole apartment trashed. I was just absolutely distraught, and I called the police, but I was too scared to get him arrested because he'd threatened to blow up my car. And the thing is, because he was involved in those kind of people, I kind of believe that he would. So I never pressed charges, and by that point, I didn't really have many people that I could really go to for help because everybody just thought I was a burden. And so I just felt so alone. And that night, when I did finally get some sleep, I woke up at like 4 a.m. in the morning to a load of screaming. Oh my God, it was like there was witches, and it was like there were spirits crying. It was like, ah. And I realized it was my soul crying. Like it was literally my soul was in so much distress, and it was just a horrible experience, to be honest, to be woken up. And then I literally cried for hours when I woke up. And so that's when I realized that something had to change. I couldn't continue that way. And it was actually at that point that I decided to leave the city where I was in, and that was Manchester. So I think just being away from the city would have been half of the battle, because then I was out of danger. And so the coming week, I made plans to literally leave the city. And then, yeah, from then on, I wouldn't say it was a uphill journey then. because it was like it was, you know what they say about healing, it's like a up, down, up, down. So even though I went and I started my healing work, I still had so many lessons to learn. So I feel like the universe still kind of brought me back into more toxic relationships to then learn more. So after that, I did have two more toxic relationships. But at that point, I was in a better headspace to deal with it and to fight, to actually fight. And I did fight. And because with one of them, I took him to court because he financially abused me. Like he basically used my credit card to buy himself a very expensive watch. And then like to the judge, he said, oh, it was a gift, but I had so much evidence that it wasn't a gift. And so he's still paying me back till this day. So that was a victory that I was very happy to have achieved, because that was not my first ever kind of feeling of victory, because up until that point I was just a victim. It was like poor me, like tears. But then just actually winning in court, I was like,
Yeah.
whoa, this feels so blissful. And hence my brand, victim to victor.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that was like literally gonna be my next question, because I feel like the listeners could be wherever they are in their journey of
Mm,
that victim mindset. And I feel like for me, if I'm speaking on my experience, I sometimes go back there a little bit and I'm like, whoa, like let's figure out how what's like working, or let me not focus on like the negative or like what's not happening, like what's working or the how. The universe never tells you how to figure out the how. It's just like do what you need to do, kind of thing. So when you
yeah.
had said about the victory, because same thing, very similar thing, for me it was more about fighting for my daughter's safety, and
Mm,
fighting her bio dad in court, and the turmoil and the just the chaos and just the high conflict and like all of the things, because he
yeah.
was one of my abusers, and to stop that cycle to happen to my daughter,
Mm,
that, like you said, even though going through all of those motions and like going to court and having to deal with all of that, and that's not easy.
no.
That's more of like, let's put let's get justice, that type of, not not from an ego place either. My purpose
Okay.
was to make sure my daughter was safe for the rest of her life,
Mm,
like not
mm.
for me, but then it was just like, oh, and this is what's going to happen for you, and that type of thing. So can you kind of walk somebody through maybe how that looked, or how that looks from that victim, poor me, because we all start in that, I call it the drama triangle. I think it's actually the
Yeah.
trauma triangle, but I
Oh,
just
no.
say drama because it's just it's just what it is. It's literally you're stuck in that triangle of like, you're the victim or you were the victim, now you're the perpetrator, now it's like that constant cycle. And like, can you kind of explain how you got out, or how somebody can get out of that?
Absolutely. So it all starts from doing the work. And what I mean by that is the inner work that you need to do. And even though I was healing, I had an amazing healer who was doing Reiki energy healing on me, unblocking my chakras, and a lot was coming out. That was fantastic work, because then that set me on this spiritual journey then, where I started to understand myself. I started to understand my identity. And then after that, after doing like the spiritual work, I then went on to do my personal development work, which was really the kind of the key for me. It was like, without my personal development I would never have had that victorious mindset. And so I did follow a lot of Tony Robbins events. I mean, he's like one of the gurus in personal development and NLP coaching. And from his work, I started to understand about, the human needs. What needs do we need within ourselves to make us feel fulfilled and make us happy in life? And so there was a lot that I uncovered around the needs, because you got the significance, which is a feeling of importance. You got your variety. You got feeling of the fact that we're contributing towards the world. There's connection and love and stability. So there's like six main ones. And then on the back end of that, what I realized was that at the time, my top need was that I needed to feel important. I needed to feel significant because for me that was validation. A lot of it came externally as well, which is why I'd always been real hard worker, a grafter, just always trying to strive and really achieve. And I'd do that at the point where I'd burn out. I was literally doing 80-hour weeks a majority of my life up until that point where I was working like my day job in sales, smashing my targets, even hitting like 256% sales versus target because that made me feel amazing. And then I also had my side hustle, which was like an education business, which I was doing in the evenings and weekends. And I was just putting in so many hours just to make loads of money because money made me feel important as well.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I realized that it wasn't making me happy though. I still felt so empty. My relationships were crap. People I was drawing into my life were crap because obviously I was running off a need which wasn't satisfying me. And so I knew that that had to change. And it did because now my greatest need is contribution. I absolutely love contributing and helping others because that really makes me feel fulfilled. Obviously, love's up there as well, love for myself, because unless I love myself, I can't love other people. And connection, oh my God, just connecting, having like real sound relationships with people and really valuing honesty and integrity in relationships. That really fills my soul because again, I never had that because a lot of my relationships previously were very ego based. They were based upon what was it for me, and it was all very selfish. I had like a lot of selfish needs in a lot of relationships previously because I didn't understand them. I just didn't understand how to have relationships. Even my marriage was a farce because I got married. I had no idea what a marriage was because I didn't know what love was. I didn't know how to connect with people because I didn't understand myself. So my identity was huge, like having to understand my identity. And again, so with the needs work, values work was really an important part of my training as well. Just, what do I value within myself and other people? And as well, like beliefs work. Because I had so many limiting beliefs which were holding me back. The fact that I look in the mirror and I just think that I'm just a nobody, somebody, it's like, who am I? I had like zero self-worth. It's really sad actually when I think back. And it wasn't even that long ago, really. Because even when back in like 2017, sorry, I was still feeling that way about myself. So these things take time. It's not an overnight fix, especially when you've just had so many different traumatic episodes growing up and when you've had like years of just dealing with horrible people who traumatized you more. It's not going to be an overnight fix, and it's going to be a journey of its own. And you're going to fall back and go high, go back down. But that's all part of it. And I just want everyone to realize that whatever journey you're on, then just stick with it because if I can get through it and so many other people like you as well, Lauren, going through a court case is huge. Oh my God. Like I had zero knowledge of how to go through a court case. So I had to learn everything. I had so many sleepless nights. I remember just like researching, thinking, what do I do? How do I get through this? And especially when you're doing it on your own as well, you got zero support because people, again, if you're a burden, which I was, people just didn't want to help me. And so that creates a lot of resilience as well, when you're doing everything on your own. And that's very character building as well. So, yeah, I'd say just keep having the strength, have a belief greater than yourself as well. Like just believing in God. I remember just praying relentlessly, saying, God, please make my life better. And please could you just bring me feelings of love because I have no idea what that is right now. And it's just asking, just like basic questions, asking God or the universe or whoever you believe in, just ask for it and you shall receive eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mm.
thank you for that because I feel like through maybe like hard times, like currently when we're recording this in the end of November, it's just really hard. The holidays are coming, people are cycling through whatever they need to cycle through, and just the energy is just, it was already heavy. Now it's just got heavier. So it's like no matter where you are in your journey, I feel like there's always some, again, it's not like the end point. I always used to say, I remember this very vividly, I'll feel better when. And then I forget all of those moments that gave me opportunities to feel good or to focus on something good. I missed all of them. And then I
Mm.
looked back, and then I'm like, well, what the hell was the point of that? And then
Yeah.
it's like learning not to do that, or again, working with a mentor or somebody that is a little bit further along, that because I worked with people that were really far away, I could not reach them, and I
Wow.
feel like that taught me to stop trying to compare myself to like what you just talked about. This doesn't happen overnight. For me, when
Mm.
I was hiring a mentor, or when I was going to quote like start to work with a mentor, I would always pick them to be so far away of like what I wanted, but I couldn't
Oh,
hold that energy. And then it was like even the money, the amount of money that they would charge, or I couldn't hold that because I wasn't there yet. So it's
yeah.
like,
True.
you kind of, that's what reminded me of you saying that. Because it's at the end of the day, it's about frequency. It's like space that we can hold, it's the money that we can hold, it's the stuff that we can hold, like in those moments. And I think that that is really powerful when a lot of entrepreneurs listen to this podcast, and I've been hearing a lot of people say to me, they have they've been victims of the narcissism in the spiritual community, or they've been in the coaching space, and they're starting to see and understand that they also attracted that too, because there's some need for, I need to make more money, I need to make more money, I need to make more money. And it's more of like, no, you don't. You need to hold the space for that. So can you kind of talk a little bit about that part of like, you mentioned some of your traumatic experiences and your patterns. When did you
Mm.
first recognize a pattern, or even still to this day, when you're working with your own mentor,
Mm.
that you now look at that differently versus you're aware of the pattern, and how do you kind of change that in your mind to kind of keep you out of that victim space?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one for me was the fact that I was 5 relationships in and realizing that they were just ending in disaster because they were disaster people. And then I was thinking, is this a them issue or is it a me issue? And I realized it was a me issue. The fact that I was drawing these people into my life. So what was it in me that these people were being drawn to? And it was the fact that I was highly insecure. I was needing validation. I had like save me written on my forehead because I was just so naive and vulnerable and
Yeah.
innocent. I was very innocent because I didn't have a clue about life really. It was weird because this is all in my interpersonal relationships because in my work I was absolutely flying, and so I was a totally different person in my work and professional life compared to in my interpersonal life. And so part of me, I didn't even want that. I didn't even want to experience interpersonal relationships because I just thought, can't I just be professional? Can't that just be my identity? And so a lot of my life I did. I literally just made my professionalism my identity. And then when it came to personal relationships, I just tried to avoid it if I could. Even though I still crave that attention and that validation from a bloke. So I wanted that bloke to give me that, however, a few minutes a day. But then they'd always want more from me, but they wanted a relationship. But the fact that I had zero love for myself, what did I have to give to these people? So that was a huge realization by the fifth guy. So after my narcissistic ex, I mean, these guys, even though they may not have been diagnosed it, they had these tendencies
Right.
of
Right.
yeah,
Right.
narcissism.
Yeah.
And the one after that, it was sociopathic tendencies. He was a bit loopy, a bit scary, like as in like he looked quite murderous as well at one point. So yeah, I mean, when you
Hear
just
you.
think, yeah, I just think, okay, now that I've had that, what next? Am I now going to end up with a murderer who's going to kill me? So,
Yeah.
so I realized that because it was constant, one after the other, after another, everyone was getting annoyed with me, or my family and my friends. They're just like, what is wrong with you? Why can't you just find someone normal? That
Yeah.
was it. They were never normal. They were all insecure beings themselves. And so I guess that was a huge realization, just when you're kind of just dating these troubled souls.
Right.
And all of it was down to the fact that I didn't honor myself. I didn't love myself. And I had zero self-esteem. And I knew that I had a lot of work to do on myself before I could even attract a healthy relationship into my life.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that too. I mean, I'm not laughing at your experience. I'm
No,
laughing
no.
at the fact that when you say these troubled souls, like I hear you. I get it. I get into that level of like, and I think everybody listening will be like, yes, they're probably in their car or wherever they are listening. They're like, yes.
Trouble.
But I wanted to point out too that this self-awareness of you realize now in those moments, I'm sure you probably shifted blame like most of us, just a very normal reaction that our ego does. But I
Totally.
really wanted to point out when um like devil's advocate, I usually say this a lot in my in my like sessions with my one-on-one clients, because it's like, and even just like working with people and my own mentors working with me, they're very gentle with my ego because of it, how fragile it now. It's not as fragile as it used to be, but
Mm.
understanding that question of, like you just said, how, like I ask myself the same question. If I'm attracting something that I don't like, and if this could be like a client, mentor, whatever, because I went through relationships. It's not just, it's work relationships and clients too. I'm like, how the fuck did I attract this client again? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Somebody that likes to drain me, somebody that stays in their ego, somebody that doesn't want to do the work. Like, what am I doing to attract that? And it was so enlightening to realize that I was avoiding my own ego, like avoiding my own, Lauren, it was time for shadow work and you need to do mirror work and you're not looking at that. So here's a client that you're going to have to go do this with them. So we did it
Mhm.
together. And, at the end, I would say, so I just did this last week and this is what we should do. Like, so it's using my own clients at the level that I am to also help me too. And I think that is, I think a lot of, mentors or guides or whatever you call yourself, I think that they think they have to be further along. And I'm saying that because you're listening to you, and it's like you are right where you meet your clients and they are right where, like I think that that's a really healthy dynamic in relationships. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. I mean, at the end of the day, I've heard that a lot of my coaches have said that, that people hire us because we're one or two steps ahead of them, and we're there for them to be accountable to, which is great. But I also do believe that at the end of the day, we all learn off each other, and so there might be certain skills that we have, but we're not really applying them because we haven't been given an opportunity to. And so by working
Yes.
with clients who need those skills, it then helps us to apply those skills with them, and it helps our own development. So absolutely, I just think at the end of the day, people pay for that accountability.
Yeah.
And somebody who's trusted, who they can obviously really trust upon. And I mean, it's not even about, how qualified they are. Like for,
Right.
for me as well. Yeah, for me, I had so many counselors and therapists and healers, and the people that really had an impact on me, they weren't the ones with PhDs or accreditations. They were like, one of them was someone who was really spiritual. She was really intuitive and really empathic, and I just trusted her. And obviously the other one was Tony Robbins. Again, he hasn't He's been trained by like, the world's amazingest NLP coach. But, even with him, these were impactful people in my life who I absolutely really appreciated having. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like he's like it's a big and I feel like watching Tony Robbins over the years. I mean, he also has been very clear about his own ego, about how things
Mm,
were very like a couple of years ago, very ego driven, and then more opening. He's very open about that stuff, of like the journey. Because, like, depending on where you came from, your ego has protected you this far. And it's for me, is what I learned is my mentors, they sometimes weren't or were, or whatever lesson I needed to learn, that they weren't gentle with my ego. And
yeah.
I feel like when you come from a place of somebody that has deep trauma and PTSD and abuse that started when they were 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 6, you're going
Yeah.
back to that place. And you don't want them to relive that trauma, but you have to be gentle with them, just like you're gentle with a child, you know? And I think through the years, I was not gentle with myself. And again, I was not gentle with other people. And it's like seeing that is where I remember people saying when I used to work in healthcare about, Lauren, you're so miserable and this and that. And it's just like, shit, I am miserable. Like, now I can look back on that. Before I would get immediately triggered and it would get defensive, and I'm like, shift the blame and shame and all the things of like immediately reacting versus now just giving that space to, you're right, because I'm self-aware of it. And I feel like that is a huge place from, cultural, conditioning, or maybe, not understanding my own limiting beliefs or anything like that, like coming from that dark place of healing. Because now these people that I used to work with, and like they listen to my story and they're like, why didn't Lauren say anything? And I would respond back, there's not a need for it. I went through what I went through to get to where I am now. Same thing, literally what you said earlier. And I think that is, I can turn it into dark humor probably right now. Before,
Yeah, me too.
not.
Yeah. Oh my God, amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it is very crazy. And that's obviously the sign that, we're healed because, yeah,
You can laugh
because,
about it. No,
yeah,
like that's why I wanted to say I'm not laughing at your experience.
gosh,
I'm laughing because I get it. Like
yeah,
I get
totally. Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
Those
And plus,
dark places, I get it.
exactly. And it's not even like, it's not even, what they say sometimes you're laughing because you're trying to cover up how you really feel. No,
Yeah,
I'm actually laughing because I've already gone through the darkness of it all, and
yeah,
now I can talk about it quite openly, and it's become like normalized conversation, and that's obviously why we're here, aren't we? We're here to normalize these conversations so that they're
right.
not a stigma and people aren't ashamed of talking about them because it's real life stuff and it's happening. People shouldn't be embarrassed. And that's exactly what I want to educate my kids about as well, that, just have these open conversations. And it's interesting because I was having this conversation last week because my ancestry, it's Indian. And so
Okay,
in India, sex education, nobody likes to teach it. And so the teachers will just skim over it. Like they won't even educate them properly on it because it's such a, stigmatized topic, and they get very embarrassed teaching it, which is why the kids are just, they're not getting the proper sex education, which is why they're growing up and it's still a very it's like a very foreign area, and that's why a lot of the boys in particular, they'll view sex very differently. And I mean, I haven't seen the latest stats, but the last stats that I had, there was like a rape every 6 minutes, and
wow,
that's just reported rape, so you can imagine the ones
none.
that aren't being reported. It's rife out there, sexual abuse, and this is why, because the sex education, it's not being taught properly.
Yeah, Yeah.
Mm.
And also, if you we thinking about like systems, like the system is broken. We all know this. Wait, every single depending on wherever, and not that I'm going to go down that rabbit hole, but regardless, the systems are broken, and people, it's freedom of speech, and talking about it. It's like we just have to create safer places, and like there's a safe place here, the podcast of people that have said to me after the recording, I've never told anybody in my life what I just told you on the podcast. And
Wow.
then to me, that's like, I'm honored because that was needed to come out and that needed, but however, they also know that it's a public, now anybody can listen, which
Mm.
then comes in with vulnerability and, you get scared. Can you kind
Mm.
of talk a little bit about maybe like your own struggles with maybe shame or self blame? Like, what was the process of you releasing those emotions, and what it looked like for you? And
Mm.
maybe what you would say to others from that are still carrying that weight?
Yeah, so even when I had my book released in 2020, there was so much shame around that and guilt as well, because I was obviously exposing some harsh truths about myself. And I know instantly, the family gets judged as well, because people were probably asking, well, where were her mum and dad? Why weren't they protecting her?
Right.
And so there was a lot of that I was having to deal with. And so a lot of my PTSD came back and I had to heal again. And that was just from releasing my book. So shame is obviously this entity and which you have to, like, it's not part of you, it's something which I feel you have to set aside at some point. But you're only going to do that by owning the truth, owning your story. And because a lot of the times, when we're under shame, then we're trying to cover up stuff that might have happened to us because we're embarrassed to admit it, or, we don't want to expose somebody if it was them causing us harm. And so it all starts from being truthful to yourself. The word authenticity, I speak about that all the time, because it was only when I was actually able to really be authentic and really own my story and share my truth with the world was when the shame started to be released. That's when it started to let go.
Okay.
And the more I shared my story through my podcasting, through talking to others, then the more shame was released from me. So I actually do believe that by sharing your story multiple times, it's going to help you to release the shame. And it's also just owning it, not feeling embarrassed, because whatever happened to us as a child, don't forget we were children. We didn't ask for that. Stuff happened to us out of, it wasn't consented, and it couldn't really be controlled, because if especially if it was an adult perpetrator, then it's their fault, that they should have known better. It was them who caused you harm, so they're the ones that should be carrying the shame, not you. And that's another one where we say, it wasn't your shame to carry at all, it was their shame to carry. And then the guilt as well, shame and guilt go hand in hand, because you might feel guilty because you carried the shame for so long, you carried the story for so long, and you hadn't released it, you hadn't told anyone about it, and then you feel guilty because it might have harmed other people, especially if it's a perpetrator who's been harming people after they harmed you. There might be a lot of guilt around that. You might feel responsible, but again, come on, we can only do what we can do. And I just say you need to be compassionate towards yourself and not hold yourself accountable for anything. Because a lot of the time, we're in survival mode, aren't we? When we're traumatized, we're just trying to survive and get through life. I mean, life's it's a challenge enough. And so stop putting yourself down and stop holding all that shame and guilt, and just let it go, and just love yourself, give yourself a cuddle, do some inner child work. That really helped me, actually. Yeah. Just really going back to my inner child and really cuddling her, and showing her the love that it needed at the time, which wasn't there for her. And God, I cried so much, because that little girl, she just needed support. She needed to be told that somebody's there for her. And so, yeah, I'm a big believer that inner child work can really be powerful in situations like that.
Yeah. Yes, or
Mm.
ask for help. So the listeners, if any of this resonates with you, make sure you go check out all of her links below in the description box
Mm.
because she has a. Can you tell us a little bit about the what you have on your link tree that could help the listeners?
Absolutely. So my whole I've got a 12-week coaching program which I work with clients to actually not only, heal trauma, but to also have that truthful relationship with themselves and others. And so we go through all of the tools and techniques that help me throughout my whole journey. So it's all packaged into my coaching program. And I do actually have like a free diagnostic toolkit, which you can all go and do now. And that's on my link tree on the top link. And that diagnostic toolkit is for those who may feel like they're in a bit of a chemistry trap where they're with where they feel like they're being attracted to the wrong partners all the time and unable to understand why. So this chemistry trap diagnostic toolkit will help you to understand that. So I do inform you to go check it out.
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much for being
Uh,
here with us. And
thank-
before we wrap up, can you, for the somebody that's listening who maybe still who is still a part of this journey, that it
mm.
feels heavy, feels impossible, feels messy, what would you want them to hear today and walk away from this conversation? That maybe they've walked through the fire and they're coming, really maybe coming through the fire on the other side. What do you want them to hear today?
Just want them to understand that you are where you are meant to be. And so if you have been struggling, or if you've been going through a bit of a crazy journey, then self-reflection is really important here. And like you said earlier as well, being self-aware, and I just feel like it's hard to do that alone. So I would advise you all to reach out for support to help guide you to understand how to be self-aware and how to understand your journey. Because it's only by understanding your journey and the patterns that your life may be going through right now, it's only then that you're going to be able to transform and make changes to it. You can't really make a change unless you understand your current circumstance and what's happened in the past. So definitely understand that you are where you're meant to be. But if you want to change, then you do need to start acting and seek the support that you need.
Right. Or have somebody else show you your shadows, help you, like stand there with you. Because we all have shadows and they all have wisdom, but we need somebody else to point them out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. And that
All of us, me included, you included, every single person in this entire planet has a mentor, coach, guide, somebody that they have to, there's your shadow. What are you gonna do with it?
absolutely. Oh, I love that shadow work. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Well,
powerful.
thank you for your courage, your voice, and showing us what rising really looks like. So, for
Mm.
anybody listening to this conversation and it stirred something inside of you, please know that you're not alone. These stories hold space for our healing, our awakening, and our rebirth. And all of her links, like I said, are below if you're watching this on YouTube in the description box. And also, if you're listening to this, they're in the show notes. So make sure you go check out her, go follow me. And if you want to dive deeper into your healing or your brand, I invite you to join the Enlightened Misfits Sisterhood over in the from the podcast in the Sisterhood in the notes below. It's just a container for transformation for everything that we talked about today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And
Mm.
remember, just stay grounded and aligned and keep leading with your purpose. I hope you have an amazing rest of your week, and I will see you next week.